Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Virtua Fighter, released on the Sega 32X in 1995. Now this was the actual first version of Virtua Fighter I really played at any length, and the portraits you see here are actually the same ones used for the arcade and Sega Saturn versions, I believe, which were just animated portraits. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with the Sega 32X, it was an add-on for the Sega Genesis that would basically go into the cartridge slot and let it play some better graphical games than the Genesis could deliver. And this game in particular, in my opinion, really shows off the technology the system used, and especially with the 3D graphics. And as I was saying, this was the first version of Virtua Fighter I actually played at any length, because when the Sega Saturn came out and it was like $400, I was still at that point really playing a lot of Genesis and Sega CD and everything. So I got a 32X and this game at some point when I was still collecting video games, and yeah, I really did enjoy this version of Virtua Fighter, and it just kind of is one of those things that's kind of nostalgic for me. I may have seen Virtua Fighter when I was younger in the arcades, maybe once or twice, but it was not like really a thing that I saw that often. It was kind of like maybe when I was down at the seashore, it would be that game you'd see some people surrounded around, but it wasn't like anything I really played at great length. I don't really remember playing it maybe more than once in my life when I was younger. But now, the version of Virtua Fighter for 32X was released in Japan on October 20th, 1995, North America on October 10th of 1995, and Europe on November 30th of 1995. Which, the funny thing about this is, in Japan at least, it was actually after Virtua Fighter Remix got released on Sega Titan Video and Sega Saturn. And the same year, Virtua Fighter Remix got released in the arcades and just about in every other region. In fact, the funny thing is, the North American version got released 8 days after Remix on the 32X. And now I know a lot of people who play this game and they say, oh, the graphics are terrible, it's the worst thing ever. But I kind of look at this and I think to myself, you're basically using a Sega Genesis with a add-on that added a couple of 32-bit processors on top of it. You can play a 3D fighting game. Now, mind you, it's not the most impressive 3D fighting game, graphically at least, but it's actually a really serviceable version of Virtua Fighter. Now, what I'm going to do is I actually have the case for the cardboard box, which sadly is a little bit mangled at this point in my hand, and I'm just going to read what it says on the back. It says, fight the best martial arts masters with over 700 precision moves. Unleash hair-trigger punch/kick combos, throws, and crushing stomps. And then it goes on to say, 8 unique fighters. Each warrior has a personal fighting style, attack strength, and special moves. Rapid, realistic 360 combat with 3D polygon graphics. See the fighters from all sides. Fluid animation just like real fighters. Get totally wrapped up in the action. Plus these new features only on the Sega 32X, which, I'll say this right now, the Sega Saturn version was a bit of a bare-bones version and only kind of had your versus and arcade versions. So, added to this version of the game, you would get multiple camera angles, low, high, and bird's eye view, and more. Change angles in mid-bout. See every bone-jarring hit, again in full match replay. Customize your fighter's clothing. Fight in group competition with the all-new tournament mode. And that's all this game says. You can use a 6-button controller, but all a 6-button controller for this game will do is allow you to like remap the punch, kick, and guard buttons to different buttons. So it really doesn't add anything to like the gameplay. Now, if you look at that timer as we go on with this gameplay, I did lose a couple times, but this gameplay was actually pretty good because, like, I think Pai-chan and Akira were the two characters I lost the most against, but considering I've had Virtua Fighter playthroughs on various systems that have been, like, fairly high, this one wasn't too bad. Now, mentioning the 32X version's reception in particular, according to Wikipedia at least, Electronic Gaming Monthly scored the 32X version 30.5 out of 40, calling it an excellent conversion given the system it's on, but dated next to the glitchy, superior Sega Saturn version and especially Virtua Fighter Remix, both of which have already been released. GamePro also noted that the 32X version suffers from more slowdown and fewer polygons than the Saturn version, and as well as tinny sound quality. But of course, that's just the Sega Genesis sound chip. What can you really do? The 32X added a little bit of sound quality, but it didn't really, like, reinvent the wheel. It just added a few more channels. Okay, and after that, the tinny sound quality, they said, but they praised the additional options not included in the Sega Saturn version, and rated it as an overall strong port. A critic from Next Generation similarly said that the 32X version is not as impressive looking as the Saturn version, but has more options and fewer glitches. And just to interject here, if you've not played the Sega Saturn version, which I will feature at some point on this channel, there's a lot of weird polygon problems where, like, polygons kind of, like, disappear and reappear in the Saturn version. You can tell it was a really sloppy port that they just kind of rushed onto the system so people could have it. And now, as they had said here, fewer glitches making it an overall excellent port. He argued the game was not worth buying a 32X for, since the system was not powerful enough to handle ports of Virtua Fighter Remix or Virtua Fighter 2, which was soon to be released on the Saturn, but that it was an essential purchase for those who already own a 32X. And the thing that I have to say about Virtua Fighter Remix, while I like the game that it has the whole texture mapped polygon appearance of Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Saturn, which the Virtua Fighter Remix is actually made on Sega Saturn hardware and Sega Titan Video hardware, I kind of like the simplistic polygon models of the original Model 1 version the best. They just kind of bring back that nostalgia because in 1993, it was a 3D fighting game, whereas everybody else had years and years of still making 2D games, and you already had a 3D game here, and it was really amazing. And if you haven't seen my original Virtua Fighter arcade videos, in Japan, Europe, and the UK, it was released in October 1993 in the arcade, and in North America it was released November 28th of 1993.
Fight! 1.
And now, as you can see, the time jumped up to like 9 minutes and 49 seconds for Akira, so I lost a decent amount of times to him. But if you look at the polygon models, they look really good in this game. And if you recall in one of my arcade videos for Virtua Fighter, I had been criticizing the Doral model for looking skinny. And honestly, if you look at the models in this game, the character models actually kind of look like that same skinniness, especially like Sarah Bryant here. She kind of has a bit of that skinniness Doral had, but in this version they had to actually scale back the models a bit, so personally I don't think it looks too bad considering it's a much weaker system compared to the Sega Model 1 arcade board. And then, of course, Akira beat me the second round there, but as you'll know, I'll end up beating him for the third round here, but the funny thing is, actually, in doing this gameplay, I had used a Hyperkin 6-button Genesis controller, and honestly, I didn't think it was that bad, because I knew so many people said that Hyperkin controller was terrible, and it worked pretty well for me.
Fight! 1. Ready.
And now you'll see in this version, Doral is even skinnier than she looked in the arcade version, but, she's still pretty difficult, but if you see here, I was actually surprised I did pretty good, considering, at the point I recorded this video a couple days ago, I really hadn't played much Virtua Fighter in a while, and I don't know if I'd made mention of this in, like, the Tekken 1 and Tekken 2 videos, or any of my early, like, fighting game videos. You kind of have to get into that, like, mindset when you're playing a lot of these games. Like, you have to get into, like, Virtua Fighter mode, if you will. And somehow, I did pretty well, and I could remember when I was playing it at this point, I was thinking, oh good, I got 2 victories, I'm just gonna plow right through Doral. And as you'll see in just a moment, that wouldn't be completely true, but yeah, suffice it to say my result wasn't too bad here. But as I said, considering the technology behind the Sega 32X and that basically the only things that are being drawn by the actual 32X add-on are the character models in the floor, the life bars and the background are being drawn by the Genesis. And if you ever wanted to see this in action, plug an AV cable directly into the Genesis and you'll see what it draws. Then plug an AV cable into the 32X. Well, I don't know if you can actually do that, because I don't know if you can plug a Genesis cable into the 32X without the Genesis plugged in, but it should just display only what the 32X is seeing. I'll have to experiment with that sometime, and as you can see, I can remember when this happened, I was cheering, because I finally beat Doral in a version of Virtua Fighter while I was recording. And you want to know something funny? This is actually my first time seeing the credits from the 32X version of Virtua Fighter, because I don't remember actually beating this before. But honestly, if you're a huge fan of Virtua Fighter and you own a 32X, then this game is actually a pretty cool purchase, because you kind of get to see what your system is capable of, and it play like a fully realized 3D fighting game that actually is pretty fun. The graphics might not be the sharpest, but it still plays really well. And yeah, I highly recommend it for 32X owners and Virtua Fighter fans. Well, this has been another Game Nexus video, and I'll see you later. Bye.